Welcome once again, my beloved brethren, to this teaching that we started about 2 weeks ago. We are dealing with a series on song heroes of the faith. First 2 weeks we spoke about Methuselah and Jethro, the father-in-law of Moses. Today, I want to speak about Levi, the progenitor of the priesthood lineage that we had in Israel. As by way of background, you'll ask, who was Levi? Levi was one of the sons of Jacob. Actually, Jacob had two wives. The first wife, Leah. The second was Rachel. And Leah was not the one that was favored. Rachel was the favored wife. And but he had a brother, Simon, and both of them were very, very, more or less, were very close. Now, there was an incident that happened when they were growing up that really showed us a kind of character that who Levi was before he had an encounter with God. There was a particular person, one of the tribes that surrounded, that they were living in their midst. Israel and his children were living with them. And one of the young men had an illicit affair with their only sister, Dinah, and which was a reproach to Israel. And the brothers hated it for what that young man did. And but the father of that young man, that was a chief of their tribe, came asking for the hand of their sister Dinah. And their father, just like their father, they asked the men of that guy's tribe to be circumcised. And at that old age, it was a painful exercise. And the man ordered his people to be circumcised because they wanted a wife. They liked Dinah, the sister to Simon and Levi. And fortunately, they didn't have a clue what they were going to do. If not even Jacob had a clue what his sons had in mind for asking them to be circumcised. Well, it was recorded that Levi and Simon went into that town or city, more or less, and put all male to the sword, slaughtered everybody, and took their goods. And that made Jacob to be very angry with them. And of course, their excuse was that they raped their sister. And when Jacob was going to bless the brothers, the sons more or less, he mentioned Simon and Levi, and he was very specific and spoke about their cruelty. They were very cruel young men, very, very cruel. But it will surprise you to know that it was from this lineage that God picked his priests. Very, very surprising. Moses came from that lineage. Aaron came from that lineage. Miriam came from that lineage. They came from Levi. And it was interesting to know that if you have children, it's the values that you drop for them, that you live for them, that you raise them with, that they will follow. Now, we have no clue why God chose the tribe of Levi. Now, we know that by God's design, the whole tribe of Israel, the whole nation of Israel were supposed to be priests. But Israel became a nation that had priests. They were supposed to be priests, but the situation changed and they had priests. Now, what happened when Moses had gone up the mountain to go and collect the 10 Commandments? All the people called Aaron and said they wanted another god. And Aaron built for them what we call the golden calf. When Moses came back and saw the nonsense that was going on in the camp, he made a statement. He said, who was on the Lord's side? It will shock you that it was only the Levites that did not interact or get themselves involved in the corruption that had overtaken the whole camp. And for that reason, God said, because they had done that, He was going to make them priests. And they became the priests, and God gave them the priesthood. And the question is, why? What happened? Why did they not join their brethren in that old craziness? Now, you have the clue in Malachi chapter 2. verses 4 to 8. And I want to read it quickly. And this was what God had to say about Levi. And he said, God said, no, that my covenant might be with Levi, said the Lord of hosts. And I said, my covenant was with him of life and peace, and I gave them to him for the fear wherewith he feared me, and was afraid before my name. The law of truth was in his mouth, and iniquity was not found in his lips. He walked with me in peace and equity, and did turn many away from iniquity. For the priest's lips should keep knowledge, and that you should seek the law at his mouth, for he is a messenger of the Lord of hosts. So quickly we see these things, characteristics that later defined who Levi was. One, God said he had a covenant of life with him, a covenant of life and peace with him. And secondly, the reason was that he feared God. He feared God. Many of us need to understand that God does not pick people randomly. There are certain things we must look for. This man had a fear of God. And I often tell people when you want to go into marriage, so based on so many variables that you can look for, one variable is always constant. If you want to have a home that will give you peace, marry the man or the woman that fears God, not the person who's involved in activities in church. The other thing about Levi that we know of is that the Bible says the law of truth was in his mouth, and iniquity was not found on his lips. The third thing that the Bible says, he walked with God in peace and equity. He walked with God. Remember, one of the charges that God had against Abraham was that he was not walking uprightly. And God came to him and told Abraham, walk before me and be thou perfect. Somewhere down the line, Levi had an encounter, and that changed the way he walked with God. I'm trusting God that you will have an encounter with God, and your life will change. Everyone that has had this encounter, their walk changed. And I'm trusting God that you also, as a priest, as a child of God, you will pay attention to your walk. And that walk speaks about your conduct. Pay attention to your conduct. It's not just faith alone. Conduct is a proof of your faith. And the Bible said that the man was a man of knowledge. He kept knowledge, he turned many away from iniquity, and reconciled many back to God. I'm trusting God that next week as we come back, I will come with another character that will be a blessing to you. Until then, stay blessed. See you next week. Bye.